49ers OTAs are on. Who's in, who's out of practice? The injury is already mounting, and Kyle Shanahan speaking on all of it on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. No, it's at Coach Crocky. It's always hard. It's always tough when you change your handle. At Coach Crocky on the Twitters. And of course, you can always hit us up anywhere. Thanks to all the everydayers out there. We love you and appreciate you here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome to all the new listeners as well. Make sure you're subbed up on YouTube and everywhere you listen to this podcast. And we're talking OTAs. Nice seeing some, you and I not there, but nice to see some video of some players moving around, seeing Nick Bosa and Trent Williams running the arc and pass rush drills. They're not hitting each other, but there's some offensive players and some defensive players on the field at the same time. Brock Purdy working, a lot of guys working. And I think the big news, and Kyle Shanahan shedding some light on some of it, is maybe some of the guys who were not there. I do want to get into some players that were there in a big opportunity for one second-year potential breakout wide receiver, maybe not the receiver most people expected to be the breakout second-year wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, because according to Kyle Shanahan, Ricky Pearsall has a hamstring injury, and it looks like that's going to sideline him until training camp. So hopefully just being cautious there. And obviously you want him to be 100% for camp, and you don't want that thing to linger. So they're trying to nip that in the bud right now, get Ricky Pearsall's hamstring straight. There were some really good reports on Pearsall working a lot with Brock Purdy in the offseason. And I know we talked a lot, Croc, about Ricky Pearsall potentially being a big breakout candidate for the 49ers and really for the NFL this year. I'm talking fantasy relevant player and a starter in his second year for the 49ers. But maybe we've been sleeping on how much of an opportunity Jacob Cowing has, especially now being one of the top three receivers in OTAs with Demarcus Robinson and Juwan Jennings catching passes from Brock Purdy. And this is a huge opportunity. Brandon Ayuk already out, Ricky Pearsall now sidelined, and year number 2 is usually when a lot of NFL wide receivers make their biggest jump in the league. And Jacob Cowing, noticeably bigger, stronger, best shape of his life. Christian McCaffrey's back, best shape of his life. A lot of guys get in the best shapes of their lives around this time, Croc, and you hear the stories now. They got to make it happen on the field and make plays. But I think this year's like hype beast for the 49ers, that fan favorite that you hope doesn't disappear once the season actually starts, might be Jacob Cowing in 2025. The camp darling, Croc. What do you think about Jacob Cowing's prospects? Healthy, on the field, one of the top 3 guys at practice in OTAs this week.
You know, I think everything is about taking advantage of an opportunity, right? And I want to take this opportunity to shout out Joe Blummer in the chat. He says, good evening from Portland, Oregon. I need a box of Voodoo Donuts. So if you can get some Voodoo Donuts to California, I'd appreciate the opportunity to eat some of those right now. But on a serious note, everything is about taking advantage of an opportunity. And you never know how your opportunity may come. And it is unfortunate that you have guys down like Brandon Ayuk, like Ricky Pearsall. You know, I assume that down the stretch of this season, those are going to be guys that the 49ers are going to have to lean on to really win games. And especially when you have this quarterback, I don't know, you just paid or gave him an extension for $53 million a year. He's going to want all of his weapons. And now he essentially will go without his, I mean, you can include Juwan Jennings in this. I mean, or you can't because he's not hurt. But I'd assume his top 2 receiver targets probably, if healthy, would be Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall. And now you don't have those guys. So for the guys like Jacob Cowing, this is a terrific opportunity to take this chance to just be the guy. It is unfortunate, though, for Ricky Pearsall. He didn't have much of an offseason his rookie year. And then his offseason just went terribly wrong. You know, he had the shoulder injuries, and then boom, he gets shot in the chest. And now he has to miss time, and he kind of battled through some of those injuries and then eventually kind of worked his way into the lineup, and he starts playing and down the stretch like, man, he looks good. You want to build on that. You don't want to have to take time off. And now OTAs, listen, it ain't the most strenuous stuff going on at OTAs, but it is a chance to just get reps. And some of it's mental reps. You know, you're kind of going through things, have speed a little bit until you start like your kind of like third or fourth phases where actually going live and you're, going with the ball, no pads or anything like that. But just going through your offense, just building that continuity with your quarterback. And I think there were a lot of people that felt like last year not having Brandon Ayuk out there because he was holding out. Man, maybe that messed up the connection a little bit between him and Brock Purdy to start the season. And we saw kind of a slow start from Brandon Ayuk. With Ricky Pearsall, we're expecting him to start hot, be ready. And it's just a minor setback. But again, those type of opportunities or those type of things, situations definitely open up an opportunity for a guy like Jacob Cowling. So what does he do with it? That's the big thing. We watched Juwan Jennings last year, where you had guys go down. All of a sudden, he has to step into a role that I don't think anybody expected him to do what he does, but he was almost 1,000-yard receiver because he stepped into the opportunity and he was ready for it. Jacob Cowling now has an opportunity to really force himself into being a part of the 49er plans.
According to Matt Barrows, the vast majority of practice was 7-on-7 type of stuff with no defensive linemen. Brock Purdy looked sharp, especially on throws to Juwan Jennings. And again, Jennings, Demarcus Robinson, Jacob Cowling were the top three wideouts with Ricky Pearsall working on the sideline. And obviously no Brandon Ayuk nursing that, coming back and rehabbing that ACL injury from last year. What's more concerning, though, the depth at wide receiver now with these injuries or the depth at safety, Croc? Because there's another guy that was a starter last year that had an injury that we didn't know about. And Kyle Shanahan let everybody know that safety Jair Brown had ankle surgery this offseason. So he's not on the field for the San Francisco 49ers at OTAs. I'm not sure what the timeline is for that ankle surgery, when he's expected to be 100%. But, man, Malik Mustafa had the injury last game of the season. We didn't really know that throughout the offseason. And all of a sudden find out, man, no Malik Mustafa potentially, and we'll see when he's back and might not be there to start the year. Now Jair Brown. So Niners out of safeties. And guess what? Fifth round rookie Marques Sigle still hasn't practiced with the 49ers. He was hurt at some point. He was able to work out and run 4.3s pre-draft. So at some point between combine, pro days, and phase one of the offseason, he's been hurt. So Marques Sigle, the rookie's been out as well. So we're looking at Jason Pinnock and Richie Grant right now as safety for the 49ers. And luckily the 49ers brought in a couple of those veterans.
I was going to say, at least those guys are veterans. They've kind of been around and they can hold it down. But for a team that is coming off of a 6-11 season, you want things to be excited about, happy about. And there was one, I saw videos of Christian McCaffrey running around. But when you just walk into this and you see all these different injuries and areas where guys are banged up, if you ask Kyle Shanahan and the coaching staff, they probably assume guys will be ready for training camp. But it's just not how you want to start the offseason. You want 100% participation. You want guys out there running around, excited, happy. Maybe you have a player or so recovering from an injury. But to this magnitude and the amount of young players who really need a lot of these reps, even if it's just walkthrough reps or if it's reps on the air or if it's 7-on-7 reps, right? They need all of that. And you kind of miss it. And the big part of it is you want to play fast. All right, you want to get guys that play fast. Well, the more they're away from it, the slower you're processing things. So it's just not ideal, especially for us. Like, well, like us, the faithful, everybody out there. They're excited to see the 49ers this year. And I think more than anything, everybody's anxious to see the 49ers be much better than they were in that 6-win season a year ago. So the injuries definitely, it's probably going to have a few people on edge.
See the full power of the Death Star on display, right? I'm in Star Wars mode, been watching a lot of Star Wars with my son, and the Emperor talking about the full power of the Death Star. We didn't see the full power of the 49ers last year with the injuries, and you want to see that this year, and you want to see it early. You definitely don't want to start this dinged up early. Now, a lot of these injuries aren't major. Who knows? Some of these players, maybe all of them that we're talking about outside of Brandon Ayuk, would be ready to play if it was a real game and a real Sunday during the season. But some guys are going to be out until training camp, and hopefully that is enough time for those guys to get right and get on the field and play with that speed and that confidence, especially the young players. And another rookie, Alfred Collins, still hasn't worked out with the 49ers since being drafted. He wasn't even physically able to do a lot pre-draft. He didn't do a pro day workout. He did a couple of, I think, combine drills, but only 2, and didn't really work out great in those. And so I'm not really sure when Alfred Collins hurt his calf, but he's not been able to play yet or practice yet for the San Francisco 49ers either. So another one to monitor, some young players that need development, need to be out there on the football field. And for Ricky Pearsall, everything's been a different injury, but you don't love the pattern of a guy who's consistently been unavailable like Ricky Pearsall over the course of his first 2 years, and obviously a gunshot wound to the chest. It has nothing to do with anything football related or how he's built or how he takes care of himself or projecting what kind of injuries he would have in the future. But the injury he had before in the same time of year last year leading into camp that didn't allow him to participate in camp. And now again, in a different injury, hamstring now this year for Ricky Pearsall. You don't love that. And he's expected and needed to have a big year for the San Francisco 49ers. Some veterans, though, back on the field. Mentioned Nick Bosa earlier. Christian McCaffrey back on the field. And where is Trent Williams? Kyle Shanahan let us know that one next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NBA playoffs, they're in full swing right now, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, series-changing plays, momentum shifts, can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action than right now because FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live during games. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big during the NBA playoffs. And there's tons of other ways to play, including NFL football. I did a Peacock and Williamson episode earlier on this week. Make sure you're subscribed there and go check out our episode on Monday where we broke down all of the rookie props that are available. And there's a ton of them at FanDuel. You can bet on Michael Williams to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. You can bet on the San Francisco 49ers to win the Super Bowl. And how about an extra $200 in bonus bets to add to the excitement if your first $5 bet wins when you're betting on the NBA playoffs? And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So according to Kyle Shanahan, Trent Williams has been around a little bit during and prior to phase 1, not currently hanging out, but he did say that he does expect Trent Williams to show up soon. So at least that's there's been some, conversations like, man, Trent Williams, is he actually going to sneaky retire on the San Francisco 49ers? The DJ Humphrey kind of on again, off again signing. But Trent Williams is just doing his thing, and he's a veteran. And, of all the players on the 49ers, probably the guy that needs to be on the practice field the least. A guy who's dealt with his own injuries throughout his career. Usually he's good for missing a couple of games. Kind of just bubble wrap him up and make sure he's ready to play. But, maybe be around the team a little bit. But apparently, according to Kyle Shanahan, he will be around very soon. How much longer will he play for the Niners? How long will his career go? I'm not sure, but he's still playing at a high level, Croc. Just need a healthy Trent Williams in week 1 is really the key there.
Trent Williams, I think everybody just expects him to show up and be good. The one thing that I continue to focus on, it's a guy that is older. It's a guy that has come off with some injuries. And I don't know, that mix right there, you would like to see him just be involved with the offseason, but he has his method to his madness and how he does things. And I'd say more times than not, just in the sense of how he plays, at the level he plays at, it works. But a couple of years ago, you said something, and it continues to hold true. Like, he misses games. And I wonder if he could be 2 games healthier each year if maybe he came to OTAs and showed up and built his body up with the trainers on staff. I'm assuming he has amazing, trainers, wherever he's training at. But I don't know. This is a guy. He's prone to miss some time each year. You can almost bank on it.
I did see some videos of him working out, doing some kind of lifting somewhere. I don't know where it was. It wasn't at the 49ers facility, as Ian says in the chat. And needs to get out there. Yeah, it would be nice to see the whole team out there. And I think that's one of the biggest keys. I did a podcast on the OT with BP, me and Jason Aponte and the Picanti show. We haven't done that in a little while. Kind of got away from my other YouTube channel, but we did one today, a little live stream. And that was one of my big takeaways with the 49ers. We've talked about it a little bit here, Croc. And, Trent Williams has kind of not really been that guy. And, he's a leader in different ways, but I think it was really important this season for the statement that the Niners made with those 3 contracts and the real true leaders of their football team in Brock Purdy now being paid at quarterback, and then on offense, George Kittle, and defense, Fred Warner. And just the statement that sent and the leadership there for the organization finally to get some deals done early, but those guys wanting to get those deals done and getting those all done before the first phase or phase 2, whatever it is, OTAs, right? To have that all done, I think it was a big time statement. And it does feel like, the Trent Williams of the world are a little bit more mercenary than those other guys. And that's fine too, to each their own, as long as you're available, ready to play football and you're playing well. But I think it's really clear who the leaders are on this football team. It's Brock Purdy, it's George Kittle, it's Fred Warner.
Yeah, no, that's very clear. And those are the guys that are going to lead the 49ers emotionally. Those are the guys that are going to lead the 49ers with their play. Those are the guys that the Shanahan can really count on to bring their A game week in and week out. And also, he believes in Trent Williams. I do think Trent Williams is a leader to some extent as well. He's probably means as much as anybody to the 49ers offense and what he brings, and kind of just being able to allow a quarterback to kind of play freely, knowing that your blind side is protected. So Trent Williams, hopefully he's healed up, he's ready to go, and he's working out, ramping up his body to prepare for a long season.
By the way, Spencer Burford getting some reps at offensive tackle in OCAs too. I think there's a good opportunity for him to maybe win that. Maybe he lost his starting right guard spot, but maybe an opportunity for him to compete at left guard. But it sounds like if the 49ers are going to have him out there taking reps at tackle, that tells me maybe a super sub, 6th man, swing tackle.
Why did it take so long? Like what? Like I felt like that was the obvious thing, right? Like this is a guy who had a lot of measurables to play tackle and was athletic as well. And it's like, no, we're going to put you at guard. And even when it started not going as well at guard, maybe they just said, nah, we want to keep him here. So he's consistently getting the reps he needs to improve as a guard. But man, there's been a lot of people saying, what about Spencer Burford at tackle? What would that look like? He was a good tackle in college at UTSA. So it's cool to see him getting some reps there. I just hope he's not only getting reps because maybe there's guys out and the guy banged up, but let's give him a real shot, a real opportunity to kind of earn a spot as a tackle, and maybe we find out when McKivitz has to leave this offseason, maybe Spencer Burford is somebody that can take over at right tackle.
I want to get in the chat here a little bit to end the week, as we usually do on this live episode Thursday night. It's going to be in your podcast feeds first thing Friday morning for your Friday morning commutes. So get those questions in topics in the chat here if you want to get into some other different stuff. But Christian McCaffrey was back on the field, which is a good thing. And, Kyle Shanahan talking about he's in the best shape of his life, looking good out there. It's really funny because it's kind of a Rorschach test. I had the beholder, I guess. Some people said that they didn't think he was like running all that fast and looking all that good in practice. And some other people are like, here he is, best shape of his life, Christian McCaffrey. He's back. He's ready to go. What are your thoughts on Christian McCaffrey and expectations this year? And I can't wait for Kyle Shanahan to be asked about Christian McCaffrey's usage and his, his load and workload. And I bet he'll say something like, oh yeah, we're going to be smart about that. And or maybe find some ways to take some pressure off of Christian McCaffrey and his usage. But I don't know if that's going to happen if he's healthy, Croc, because Kyle Shanahan's not wired that way. And my idea of him being the new wide back for the 49ers, we'll see. We'll see if there's some new wrinkles for Christian McCaffrey. But step one is just being healthy and being able to run on that calf and, Achilles, both calves and Achilles, essentially. But moving around out there looking good, not looking like a guy who was hurt to me. But I didn't watch a whole lot of it. I just thought it was funny how I saw different people saying he looked bad and looked good.
I remember a couple years ago now, Aaron Rodgers was coming back from a ruptured Achilles. And people thought at some point that season he may come back, and he kind of got out there practicing. You're kind of watching him move around. And you're like, I'm not so sure he's 100%, right? It doesn't look great the way he was moving around. When I watched Christian McCaffrey today, and it's one clip that's floating around, and it's from like 3 different angles, but it's like the same. It's clearly the same clip.
Yeah.
He looked fine. Now, I have seen a lot of people saying, "Oh man, like there's something going on that doesn't look great." It looked. I don't know. I watched it. So I saw one person slow it down, so I got to watch it in slow motion. Again, I got to watch it from a bunch of different angles. It's the same clip.
How fast does he look in slow motion?
Fine. I was thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna see this like hitching his giddy up or anything. There was he planted multiple times to make one cut, and I wonder if he could have just, if he was more comfortable, if he could have just put his foot in the ground once and made that cut. I'm not sure, but overall he looked fine. He looked like Christian McCaffrey. So that's not something I would, at least not to that video. I wouldn't overreact to it. Now maybe if I got to see him in person and there's more, reps that I get to see, and I'm like, oh, okay, it does look a little weird. Okay. But I didn't see that from just the one clip from 5 different angles that I got to see.
More on 49ers OTAs, your questions. We'll get into the Niners and how we feel about things in the spring as the weather's turning a little bit warmer. It's definitely warmer where I'm at today, and starting to feel like summer, getting close to 49ers training camp here in a couple of months. And your questions to finish up this episode and this week of Locked On 49ers next.
All right, Peacock. I was scrolling through during the break. I was scrolling through X, and I saw a couple of more clips just now.
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey. Watch him run a route. Oh, he's running routes on the air. He looked good. Ran a route, good little hitch route. I mean, it wasn't like they asked him to run this, 15-yard comeback, but about, 5-yard hitch. Caught the ball, got upfield, looked smooth. Didn't see any hitch in his run. So I don't know. It looks pretty normal to me.
I didn't see anything weird about it, but again, I saw one clip, and I just think it's classic, and just there's so little you can actually take away from this time of year. The big takeaways are: did you get your contracts done? Who's there? Who's not? Who's healthy? Who's not? Did someone actually completely change their body? And I think that's sort of like where you get excited about someone like Jacob Cowing. It's like Jacob Cowing's been through a year in the NFL now. He wants to be stronger, right? He's putting in work. I think that's something that you can tell a lot more than anything else. These guys are playing on air. Fast guys are going to look fast. I just think that it's really, really difficult to take a lot unless you're just like, this guy's huge, right? Or this guy's really small. There's some things you can take away from it, and it's not necessarily because of how they're performing. Healthy, who's not, what contracts are done. That's really the key about what's going on right now. And a lot of the stuff is mental. They're putting, one foot in front of the other, trying to get these guys ready to play fast, as you mentioned earlier. That's what this phase of OTAs is all about. So I think most people probably just need to chill on scouting on air practice reps for the most part, whether good or bad.
Also, I think a lot of people downplay how important OTAs are. Like they are not significant in the sense of, you're going to win a Super Bowl because of, what OTAs looks like. But for a lot of guys, man, it is a ramp up period, getting your body ready. And then you have training camp and you want to continue it, or excuse me, you have your break and then you want to continue it in the training camp. But you learn a lot. Like, you get a chance to learn the offense. You get a chance to learn the defense. You get a chance to lift at a certain pace, and they ramp that up, and really taking care of your body's injuries. I would be curious to know guys that just don't miss an OTA practice or workout in comparison to the guys that do their own thing. What's the injury rate? And injuries just happen. It's a contact sport, football, but I've been there, and I see how they prepare your body for it. And for me, maybe it was just me because that was the best training that I had ever gotten. But I thought it was solid work. And I did see this because again, people like to downplay OTAs. Shout out to my guy Darren Walls. He's now the defensive back coach at Sacramento State. But I saw Darren Walls take like the job from somebody else that was a projected starter, Aaron Berry. If you remember Aaron Berry back in 2011, 12, 13, kind of in those years, right?
I do.
But Aaron Berry was there, and I saw it with my own eyes. Darren Walls was making more plays in OTAs, and before you knew it, he was running with the ones. Now, when D. Milliner was drafted, and once he got healthy, came back, he was just plugged in as a starter opposite Antonio Cromartie. But once he started kind of getting a little weird during the season, they went to Darren Walls. So OTAs, it's not for nothing. Like I think a lot of people want to project. Like there are some battles going on a little bit. Some guys it doesn't mean anything for Trent Williams. It wouldn't mean something for, if he had Deebo Samuel, right? Or Juwan Jennings, his role is his role. But there are some other guys, like maybe these safeties that have an opportunity right now. Maybe a guy like Jacob Cowan, like where this stuff does matter, what's going on.
We're asked in the chat if we saw CJ West's arms. What about his arms? Are you asking about there? He's a shorter arms guy. He's a powerful guy. He's got powerful hands on tape. I'm not sure what about his arms we might have needed. Did you see the story about Diamador Lenore and how he said that he was afraid of Kyle Shanahan? He was afraid to talk to him for like a full year, like an entire season. He didn't talk to Kyle Shanahan because he didn't want to piss him off, because it was after Kyle Shanahan got fined $100,000 because they had contact in practice, and the league found out about it because rookie Diamador Lenore locked up somebody in practice and put the practice rep tape on social media to show how good he was doing. And then the league came down on the 49ers. And so that's kind of scared him. And he's like, man, I just wanted to stay away. Like, I didn't even want to talk to Kyle Shanahan because I didn't want to tick him off. I thought that was hilarious. And like, he's a guy that's, a staple of the football team, starting corner, has gotten paid. And he didn't even talk to his head coach for an entire year. I wonder if Kyle Shanahan noticed.
Well, when you are a defensive back and your, and your head coach is more of an offensive guy and he's on that side of the ball, there's probably a lot of instances where, you don't have to really talk to him. So now he purposely was avoiding Kyle because of this. So no, I had never heard that story. I did hear that heading into year 2's training camp and they had the practices against the Minnesota Vikings, he felt like there was a chance he was not going to make the squad. And that was kind of the turning point in the sense of how he felt like Kyle Shanahan viewed him that offseason, and he think really helped him solidify himself on the roster. So I heard that story, but I did not hear the story of him kind of being worried about Kyle Shanahan talking to him and probably scolding him for getting him fined.
Well, dude, and I think that's like, it's also just goes to show like these guys are human beings, and it's not that different from your job in a lot of ways. Like, how many people are excited when they pick up their phone and it's their boss calling them? You know what I mean? Most people are like, oh, shoot, I don't really want to answer this. Like, probably a lot of people out there probably thinking about it in their jobs going to work on Friday. Be like, I hope I don't have to talk to my boss today, right? That'd be a great end of the week. Get out to the weekend without talking to my boss today. There's like,
I don't know how many times Ross Jackson has called me to just say, hey, Croc, how you doing? Everything good? Like, it's always something.
Yeah, occasionally, actually, Ross is really good about that. And he's our channel manager. He doesn't feel like he's our boss though. I really consider, David Locke our boss, the owner and founder and CEO of the Locked On Network. The namesake of the network, Locked On, took his name. Locked On Jazz was the first podcast here on the network, hosted by David Locke. But you don't feel like occasionally he will call and be like, hey, this is a good thing that happened. Awesome job doing this and that. So it is nice to hear from him. And I think Ross does a really great job doing that. He's a great dude. But I think I have had jobs in the past where I was just like, oh God, I just don't want to talk to my boss. Would prefer just not to see him all day or talk to him. Right. So I think people can really identify with that. I like this.
I hope my coaches don't feel that way about me, because I'll call for the most random stuff.
Yeah. Or your players. Like, would you want your players to be just a little bit afraid of you though?
Yeah, I called a player tonight to have him send me a picture of these cleats.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet when I called, like, I wonder what was going through his head when he saw
Yeah.
it. Why is Coach Croc calling me?
Yeah. Oh, shoot. He's going to cut me. He's like, oh, you want to talk about cleats? Okay. I love this from Benali, who says, always feel like all running backs are hard to judge at practice. Like, do we really want to see Christian McCaffrey pushing himself in practice? Right. And there's no tackling. There's no contact. I think running backs are the hardest one. Like running backs and linemen are the hardest ones to really gain anything from in these unpadded practices. You start to see a little bit more in training camp, and especially when they get into the preseason games. And it's just a different element when there's a physicality to it, when guys are able to hit each other. And it's just, I think it's just too hard to take a lot away from some of these practices, especially when you're just seeing a couple clips. And so I do definitely agree with that. And it happens all the time, right? There's always that one darling. And I hope Cowing isn't the type of player this offseason who gets a lot of love. He's fast, looks good when the pads aren't on, and then the season starts and he just disappears, right? And that happens every year, every team. Go into any deep into any team's Twitter, right? And you'll find whatever guy that year is just the hyped up player, and everyone loves him. And then that player just disappears and doesn't do anything. But he's like the camp darling, the preseason superstar, and then doesn't do much. And most of the hype around a player that happens from unpadded practices, and it's just different once the pad comes on.
Well, a lot of times I don't think it's that player can't have some kind of role and that he couldn't, do well in it. What he do as well as whatever you saw in training camp. Maybe not to that extent, but it's just the way that the roster kind of falls. And for a guy like Cowing, no matter what he does, it's going to be hard, especially when everybody's out there, everybody's healthy, to just play and get targets over Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, like Christian McCaffrey. Like there's just, so Cowing could actually be good. And he's just not going to get the looks with the way the current roster is constructed.
Right. And he's got extra opportunities now, but when everyone's back and healthy, even if like the team likes you and you're a really good player, you're the fourth wide receiver, especially in a lower volume passing game like Kyle Shanahan's offense, you just probably won't see the field very often. Unless you're playing, you might not even have a uniform on Sunday if you're the fourth wide receiver that's not on special teams.
Did you hear what Julio Jones said about the Super Bowl?
About the 28-3 Super Bowl? No.
Well, I think part of his comment was about, they were up 28-3. So at that point, maybe that can kind of skew some of the numbers. But he was shocked that he only had 4 targets in that game. He said, I have 4 opportunities. That's it.
Super Bowl.
In the Super Bowl, 4 opportunities. He said, that's it. One of them was that crazy sideline catch. He had 4 opportunities. He had 4 catches.
Well, that's
we talk about that a lot with Kittle and the Ayuks and those guys, where it's like, man, if George Kittle has 5 targets and he has 5 catches, then he should have had 8 targets.
Right. Yep, exactly. And one thing about Belichick I will say is, like, that's his thing he's known for, is I'm going to take away your best guy however I have to, and then make you go somewhere else. And so that might have been part of it. It was just, he was kind of game planned out of it, but still Julio, you could find ways to get him the ball more than 4 times in the biggest game of the year.
So what Belichick likes to do is he likes to put his CB1 on your CB2, and then he'll do bracket coverage to your wide receiver 1.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which is smart. I like that.
It is smart. Do you think it's Jacob Cowing versus Jordan Watkins? Kind of somewhat similar profiles, kind of mid-round, day 3 guys with speed that have some work to do, that need to prove that they're NFL guys and find their role in the offense. Do you think there's 2 guys fighting for one spot potentially for the 49ers? Like one of them's kind of gone and one sticks for a while?
Ooh. I don't know if it would be between those 2 guys. I think because of the similar kind of profiles, people will say that, but they still feel like different type of receivers.
They're not identical, but just as far as like what they would give you in their roster spots, like let's say a guy like Junior Bergen earns the return job, and then it starts to get pretty slim at wide receiver. And what exactly is the role? What position does Cowing play? What position does Watkins play? And who has the opportunity to actually contribute to the 49ers the most? And do they both make it and they cut someone like Demarcus Robinson? I still don't understand the Demarcus Robinson thing, just from the standpoint of he's going to be suspended at the beginning of the season when you need a veteran to replace Brandon Ayuk, who's not going to be ready to go. Otherwise, Demarcus Robinson would be a perfect player. But once Ayuk's back, well, now where's the role for Demarcus Robinson? And he's going to be out at the beginning of the season when you need that veteran player to be there. And now Pearsall's got so I don't know. It's a weird wide receiver group, to be honest with you, with the way this thing has come together for the 49ers. There's quite a few question marks, and it could turn out being very good still. But now with the hamstring for Ricky Pearsall, it's just, you start to look at it, you're like, all right. Juwan Jennings is the number one. Demarcus Robinson, who's not going to play, who's suspended for 3 weeks, is the number 2 in practice. Jacob Cowing is your number 3 right now. Interesting group.
At least they'll be ready for preseason.
We'll see. I think hopefully these guys will be there at camp and will be there in the preseason. And hopefully a lot of these injuries are not serious and they are precautionary. And the 49ers won't have a repeat of the injury-riddled season that they had in 2024. Thanks, everybody, for stopping in. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Really, truly, hit that subscribe button. The thumbs up helps the algorithm and helps other people find this program. And Croc and I will be back next week right here. Locked On 49ers.